here's something that probably doesn't make sense about you. When there's a deadline, a real one with consequences, you work. You sit down, you focus, you actually get things done. Maybe not comfortably, maybe not gracefully, but you get it done. You know you can do it. The proof is right there every time the pressure arrives. But take away the deadline. Give yourself a free afternoon with no external pressure. No one waiting on you, all the time you could need. And suddenly, the same person who executed perfectly under the wire can't start a single thing. You open the tab, you close it, you check your phone, you come back, you sit there. An hour disappears. Another one follows it. And the worst part isn't that you wasted the time. The worst part is that you watched yourself do it. You saw it happening and couldn't stop it. So, what does it actually mean that pressure is the only thing that makes you work? Because I don't think the answer is what most people assume it is. And once you see the real answer, it changes how you understand yourself completely. That's what this video is about. If you have been watching the last two videos on this channel, you already know some of this story. You know about resistance, Steven Pressfield's name for the force that shows up specifically when work actually matters to you. And you know about the pattern I kept living, working brilliantly under pressure, collapsing the moment it lifted. If this is your first video here, that's fine. Everything you need is in this one. In the last video, I said I found a book that finally gave a name to what I had been going through. This is the video where we actually go into it, specifically the part of the book that comes after naming the problem. The part that answers, okay, so what do you actually do? So, by the end of this, you will understand why the pressure dependency happens. Not just that it happens, and the one shift that starts to break it. Not a productivity hack, not a morning routine, something deeper than that. So, let's get into it. So, after I quit the agency, which I talked about in the last video, I made a few changes, fixed my sleep, started producing content again, things started moving. And then something happened that I didn't expect. I posted some edited clips on Instagram, just putting my work out there, and a potential client reached out. An actual inquiry. We started talking, figured out the rates, and aligned on the work. It was the first real sign that the direction I had chosen was working. And almost immediately, I stopped posting. Not because I was busy with the client work, not because I ran out of ideas, but because the moment security arrived, the motion stopped. I felt like I had something lined up, so the urgency disappeared. I noticed it within days. And the strange thing was, I literally talked about this pattern in a video. I knew what it was called. I understood the mechanism, and it still happened. That's the thing about knowing the name of something. It doesn't automatically give you power over it. But here's what I noticed alongside that. And this is the thing that actually started to help. While I was editing my own videos, I kept observing this. Before I start, everything feels heavy. The project sits in front of you like something you have to carry. And the longer you don't start, the heavier it gets. But the moment I actually begin, even just 1 minute of real work, opening the file, making a single cut, typing one line, something shifts. Suddenly, I can work for an hour, then another one. The weight just disappears. The problem was never capability. The problem was the gap before the first action. And Pressfield's book had something very specific to say about why that gap exists. And more importantly, what kind of person closes it. The book is called The War of Art. And if you have watched the earlier videos, you already know the first major idea in it, resistance. The force that shows up specifically when the work matters. But Pressfield doesn't stop there. Because naming the enemy is only the half answer. The second half is about what actually defeats it. And his answer surprised me because it's not a technique, it's not a system, it's not a morning routine or a productivity framework. It's a decision about who you are. He calls it turning pro. Idea 1. The amateur versus the professional. Pressfield draws a line between two kinds of people, and it has nothing to do with skill and nothing to do with income. It has to do with how they relate to their work. The amateur loves the idea of work. They are genuinely passionate about it. They think about it, they talk about it, they have big plans for it. But they only shows up when they feel like it, when conditions are right, when inspiration arrives, when there's enough external pressure. The professional shows up anyway, not because they feel like it. Often they don't. Not because conditions are perfect, often they are not, but because they have made a decision that this is what they do, regardless of how they feel about it on any given day. Pressfield puts it simply: the amateur plays for fun, the professional plays for keeps. Now, here's what hit me when I read that: the amateur isn't the person who doesn't care, it's almost always the opposite. The amateur is often the person who cares the most, so much that they can't afford to find out whether they are actually good enough. So they protect themselves by never fully committing, by keeping it slightly optional, by needing external pressure to force them into the arena. Because if the external pressure is responsible, then failure isn't entirely on them. The pressure dependency we have been talking about, mine, maybe yours, that's not a time management problem. It's not a discipline problem, it's an amateur problem. External pressure is doing a job that your own professional commitment hasn't taken over yet. Idea 2: what turning pro actually means. And this is where Pressfield gets specific. Because turning pro isn't about getting better at the work. It's not about improving your skill or upgrading your system. It's a decision, a private, internal decision that you are no longer treating this as optional. The amateur waits to feel ready. The professional decides that they are ready and then starts. The amateur needs the right conditions. The professional creates conditions by starting. The amateur has a relationship with the work that's based entirely on a feeling. I will do it when I am in the mood, when I have energy, when I feel motivated, when the timing is right. And because feeling is unpredictable and motivation is temporary, the work is unpredictable and temporary too. The professional has a relationship with the work that's based on a commitment. The mood is irrelevant. The energy level is irrelevant. The question of whether they are going to do it is already settled. So it doesn't have to be decided each time. And here's the strange thing Pressfield points out about that shift. The moment you genuinely make that decision, resistance changes. Not disappears, changes. It can no longer use your own ambivalence against you because the ambivalence is gone. The negotiation is over and resistance only wins negotiations. Idea 3. Three things the professional does differently. Pressfield lists out specific qualities of the professional. There are several, but three of them map so directly to what I have been living that I want to walk through them. The first one: the professional shows up every day. Not when inspired, not when the stars align, every day. This is the one that broke my agency experience. I only showed up fully when the deadline was real enough to force me, which means I was outsourcing my commitment to external pressure. A professional doesn't need the deadline because their commitment is the deadline. The showing up is non negotiable before the day starts, not something they decide in the moment. The second one: the professional doesn't take failure personally. The amateur's deepest fear, and I think if you are honest with yourself, you will recognize this, is that a bad output means they are not good enough. If the video doesn't land, if the project doesn't go well, if someone criticizes the work, that feels like evidence about who they are, not just what they made. So they delay. Because if you never fully try, you can never fully fail. You can always say, well, I didn't really go for it. I was tired. The timing wasn't right. I had other things going on. The incomplete attempt is a safety net. The professional separates themselves from the output. The work can be bad. That doesn't mean they are bad. They fix it and go again. And the third one, the one that connects most directly to what I observed about my own working. The professional doesn't wait for inspiration. They sit down and do the work. And inspiration often shows up because they sat down, not before and never before. That minute I mentioned earlier, the 1 minute of starting that turns into an hour of working, that's not a coincidence. That's literally how this works. The flow state doesn't summon you to the desk. You go to the desk and then the flow state arrives. But the amateur has it backwards. They wait to feel it before they start. So they are always waiting. Now I want to slow down for a second because I think there's something important to say here before we get to the practical stuff. Understanding all of this, and I mean genuinely understanding it, not just hearing it, doesn't automatically fix anything. I have now read about resistance. I made 2 videos about the pattern. I know what it's called. I know why it happens. I can see it in real time when it's occurring. And I still stopped posting the moment a client inquired. The pattern repeated. Knowing the name of the enemy didn't make the enemy go away, because here's what Pressfield says about turning pro that most people miss. It's not a one time decision, it's a decision you make every morning. Every time you sit down, the commitment has to be remade continuously, not just once in a moment of inspiration, which means the moment you stop remaking it, the moment you coast on yesterday's decision, the amateur comes right back. And there's another layer to this that I haven't talked about yet, which connects to the fear of judgment. Before I started posting on Instagram, before any of this, there was this other thing running in the background. What will people think? Am I coming across right? Will they judge me for this? That's amateur thinking too. Not because caring about quality is wrong, it's not. But because the work was being held hostage to external validation before it even existed. I was auditing the output before creating the output, based on imaginary reactions from imaginary viewers. The professional makes the work and lets the audience decide. They don't audition, they perform, and then they listen to the feedback and improve. But the making comes first, always. The judgment of others, real or imagined, doesn't get a vote before the work is done. These things don't fix themselves by reading about them. But here's what starts to shift things. 3 specific shifts, not habits to build over 30 days. Changes in how you operate, starting with the next time you sit down to work. Shift 1. Replace the deadline with a commitment. The deadline works because it makes the work non negotiable. But the deadline is external. It only arrives when someone else creates it. And when it's not there, neither are you. The professional creates non negotiability themselves. Practically, this looks like pick one specific time of day that is work time. Not when I feel like it, not when I have energy, not when I get through everything else first. A time. That time is the commitment. You show up to it the same way you would show up to a job, because for the professional, it is a job. Even when nobody is watching, even when there's no deadline, even when nothing is forcing you, especially then. The external pressure that used to make you work, you are replacing it with this. Shift 2. Separate starting from finishing. The reason the work feels so heavy before you begin is that your brain isn't treating it as one task. It's treating it as every task at once. Every decision, every hour, every possibility of something going wrong, all sitting in front of you simultaneously. And that weight is real. It's why you open the file and immediately feel the urge to close it. The professional doesn't try to start the project, they start the next action. Not edit the video, open Premiere Pro. Not write the script, open the document and type one sentence. Not work on the project, make one decision about one thing. The entry point has to be small enough that resistance doesn't bother showing up for it, because resistance mobilizes against significance. It doesn't really care about you opening a file, and by the time it notices you are actually working, you are already in. This is exactly what I kept observing. 1 minute of actual work and I am suddenly an hour deep. That mechanism is available to you every single time, but you have to enter through a door small enough to fit through without resistance. Shift 3. Stop performing, start producing. The amateur thinks about how the work looks. The professional thinks about whether the work is done. The question that burns the most time, the one underneath all the delay, the checking, the adjusting, the reorganizing, is not how do I do this? It's what will they think of this? And that question has no useful answer before the work exists. You can't know what people will think of something that isn't made yet. So asking the question is just delay with a more respectable name. The only useful answer is make it, put it out, and find out. Then take that information and do better next time. That's the entire loop. And none of it starts until you stop performing for an imaginary audience and start producing for a real one. The fear of judgment isn't protecting you, it's just keeping you in the waiting room. So let's come back to where we started. You work best under pressure. Most ambitious people do. And for a long time, for me, for a lot of people, that feels like a quirk, a personality trait, just the way you are wired. But it's not. It's information. It's telling you that external pressure is doing a job that you haven't yet taken over yourself. The commitment that should be internal, the professional's commitment, the one that makes showing up non negotiable, is currently being outsourced to deadlines and urgency and other people's expectations. And when those things aren't there, neither is the work. Turning pro. The way Pressfield means it isn't about becoming a different person. It's about making a decision and then remaking that decision every single day. The professional isn't someone who never feels like avoiding the work. They feel it constantly. They just stopped giving that feeling the deciding vote. I haven't fully crossed that line yet. I will be honest about that. The pattern still shows up. I still catch myself waiting for something external to push me, but I catch it faster now. And what I do when I catch it is different. I don't wait for the mood to arrive. I open the file. I make one cut. I type one line, and then something else takes over. The feeling follows the action. It was always that way. The amateur just had it backwards. That's what this video was about. If this landed for you, drop something in the comments, not a generic response. Tell me specifically which version of the amateur pattern do you recognize most in yourself. The pressure dependency, the waiting for inspiration, the performing for imaginary audiences. Which one hits closest? I will read all of them. So, see you in the next one.